The church is oppressive, man. You guys need to be free.
When the angel confronted him, he's now realizing, oh my gosh, I'm murdering people's souls. We are given these examples of these antichrists being members of the church.
The prophet's wrong. The church is going to hell in a handbasket. The jab is not working. If anything, it's causing more harm than good.
When I looked at the prophet and I saw him doing it, I was like, why is he doing that? And he was also a medical practitioner. If anybody was to be taken as seriously as possible outside of his prophetic ability, it would have been him.
All right, so well, here we go, right? Kingside Podcast. It's finally actually accurate, where it's like there's more than one king.
It's true. It's my fault.
It's all good. We'll you can pay extra tithing later in order to make up for it. Actually, earlier today, someone in our branch presidency were like, "You need to come over here. We got to do a quick meeting real fast." He's like, "What?" He's an older guy from Vietnam, so yeah, I can imagine he doesn't hear very well. He's like, "What?" And we're like, "You now have to pay 20% tithing." He's like, "What?" And he keeps walking down the hallway, getting closer, and the branch president was like, "Now it's 30%." What are you guys saying? Now it's 40%. It's like, what? It's like, you now have to pay 40% tithing because you pretend like you can't hear us. All right, so today we wanted to talk about, I think this is a really, really important topic, and I'm going to throw a little curveball at the beginning of it just because I feel like this is kind of like probably a better way to title it. We wanted to focus upon, trusting church leaders, and this whole understanding of personal revelation and also errors that can happen in the church. And someone in my church today, in branch, so they give a talk, someone from the stake, and he specifically was talking about the gift of discernment. He said we need to be better at discerning as Latter-day Saints. And I feel like that's probably kind of like the key to everything we'll be discussing today, is like how do you know if you can trust the leaders of the church, right? And also in all that's taking place, what should you do? I think if we can discern by the Holy Ghost and not by some other spirit, then we're going to be okay, right? But you can't truly have the gift of discernment unless you are worthy and have a reliance upon the Lord and the revelations he has received. And the reason why I say that, and this is going to launch us into what we're going into, is because those who have a pretended gift of discernment, right? I'll say it differently. I'll say a gift of discernment that comes from a different spirit are those who can discern all sorts of evils from church leaders and what's going on. And so therefore they're unable to stay faithful and to their testimonies, to their covenants, right? Suddenly the temple doesn't matter much to them anymore. The words of the prophet don't matter to them anymore, right? And they fall away. But they have this ability to discern. And it's like, yes, but by what spirit? And what exactly are you discerning? So anyways, that's just want to throw that out there. I say that because I thought about, you guys know the talk by Elder Oaks that we were studying. Oh crap, is it gone now? The Two Lines of Communication, October 2010. Elder Oaks, or President Oaks now.
Yeah,
I love it because he talked about the personal line and personal revelation. And he just said, unfortunately, it is common for persons who are violating God's commandments or disobedient to the counsel of their priesthood leaders to declare that God has revealed to them that they are excused from obeying some commandments. In other words, that they have discerned there's something different for their path, or from following some counsel. Such persons may be receiving revelation or inspiration, but it is not from the source they suppose.
Yeah, where was that in that talk?
That was at the very end of his first section of the personal line, right before he discusses the priesthood line.
Right. Sorry, I've got it right here.
yeah. Sorry, I've got a bunch of stuff highlighted on mine. So Let's see. Wait, where was that one?
So when you find the priesthood line,
Yeah.
it's the paragraph right above the priesthood line.
Right, I gotcha.
Yeah. The very last sentence says this: the devil is the father of lies, and he is ever anxious to frustrate the work of men, or work of God, excuse me, by his clever imitations. And you think of the "Come Follow Me," the lesson in Sunday school today
I was just
was
thinking.
like, yeah, what we're gonna say, Ryan?
Well, yeah, no, I was just thinking, cool, winky dink, and when we actually didn't plan it that way, it was just a topic we decided on a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, and as I was reading, yeah, like Korhor, Nehor, all those other
Horse.
uh, oh man. So yeah, so we're just talking about Korhor and all them, all those antichrists that come around and they're fooled, and they almost always confess that they knew what the truth was, but that they were, um, they knew that they were deceived by the devil.
Yeah, well, eventually, right? So here's the thing, though. It's really interesting because you have, and I say this in light of individuals like on social media that I've seen who do this, who are antichrists in and of themselves. They, and I sent you that quote about the definition of antichrist from our scripture dictionary, our guide to the scriptures. But there are people who they have been through the temple, and it's very obvious Korhor had been through the temple. He talked specifically about saying your ordinances. He's telling Amal, your ordinances, bind people down to these silly traditions, and imprisons their minds. Right, basically, you make them slaves to you, and also you're trying to make money off of them. Right, he's been through all the temple experiences, and what was his reason for doing all this? Because wasn't it an angel appeared to him? Am I misremembering?
Yeah.
He's saying, oh yeah, I mean, I received this revelation. Yeah, that's just interesting to me because I feel like nowadays it is extremely easy, extremely easy for us to do the exact same thing, because if we disagree with something a general authority said, then it's just like, well, I have received my own revelation, and tithing isn't for me. I can have wine. I'm not the weak among us, as the scriptures say. It's only for the weakest amongst the saints. I'm not one of those weak ones.
Yeah, right. I'm so powerful. I'm not weak. Yeah, that's what's so good about this talk, Elder Oaks, because he's talking about the two lines here, right? I mean, the title, right? Two lines of communication. But I really liked. There's a lot of good stuff in the personal line section of the talk, and how important it is, and also, but mainly, I really like the ideas that he talks about of understanding the personal lines and what that means for us, right? So I think it's the third paragraph there on this personal line of communication with the Lord, right? So he talks about our belief and practice is similar to that of those Christians who insist that human mediators between God and man are unnecessary because all have direct access to God, right? So we do all have the ability of personal revelation, right? So you can definitely see where people might get it twisted.
Correct. This is where I forget. I think it's Julie Hanks. She's a big social media lady on Latter-day Saint. She's also a therapist. Totally antichrist. I don't care if people see this say that's a little rough to say. I'm like, yeah, antichrist. And what she says is we actually have a personal authority. She doesn't call it line authority. She calls it a personal authority, and it actually supersedes priesthood authority. It's a very crafty, subtle, devilish way of talking about agency, but saying agency is more important than obedience to covenants. More important than it's like, no, God gave us agency to follow Jesus Christ, and we follow Jesus Christ by following His chosen vessels.
Yeah, right, yeah. So let me ask a question for both you guys, or maybe not necessarily a question, but maybe let's define Antichrist. Well, I mean, I don't have a definition right off hand, but
Well,
I guess what do you guys?
do you want me to read the one definition though and see what we take of it from the Guide to the Scriptures?
Yeah. Like Bible
Says
something, or where does it come from exactly?
it comes from the Guide to the Scriptures in our Gospel Library app.
Okay.
And it says, anyone or anything that counterfeits the true gospel plan of salvation and that
Mhm.
openly or secretly opposes Christ. John the Revelator described Antichrist as a deceiver. And so it's interesting because some might say, well, certain individuals are not secretly or openly opposing Christ. It's like, well, when the Lord appoints his leaders upon the earth to guide us, right? We are taught by the scriptures, and even President Oakes quotes it in his talk, that whether it's by the Lord's voice or the voice of his servants, it is
The same.
the same. which is fascinating, right? Because I feel like we could too easily become Antichrist in certain ways, but from what I have seen, actually, let me ask you guys this question, because I think I already have an answer to this, and we had discussed this at church. I did with some people, but why was Alma the Younger not an Antichrist, but Korihor was? Weren't they doing the same thing? They were both destroying the Church of God.
Oh yeah.
But why is Alma the Younger? He was not an Antichrist, though. They didn't call him an Antichrist. And if you compare his experience to the other Antichrist, the angel that appeared to him, who stopped him in his way, basically just said, hey, if you want to destroy yourself, go ahead, buddy. Go off and continue living your life that way. Whereas the other Antichrist, very different experiences. But Alma the Younger was not considered Antichrist. I'm pretty sure that it would have called him out as one. So what made him not an Antichrist versus Korihor and the other whores?
I mean, honestly, I would consider him an Antichrist because he's literally trying to destroy the Church of Christ. And maybe it's just they just didn't decide to use that in the scriptures. I don't know.
What do you think, Sky?
I mean, I think if we define him as anyone going about as an antichrist, as anyone who's going about to oppose Christ, oppose the work of the church, oppose, deny that you could know that Jesus is the Christ, that he would come and atone for sins. You know, this is something Korihor said, that no one can know these things. No one can. Then if he's going about trying to destroy faith in that, then he's definitely in that Alma the Younger experience, fits the bill perfectly. And so this is an interesting question, because it's not a question I have ever posed to myself or heard anyone pose. So I'm glad you asked it, because we do get these clear examples, right, from Zeezrom and Korihor, and so I want to think that Alma the Younger, in his later years, he's very bold. He's different than a lot of the other missionaries in a certain sense. He goes out and he directly confronts some of them. Other missionaries do in the Book of Mormon, but I think he recognized what Korihor was doing. What he was, the major goal of his efforts was to deny people's faith, was to cause them to deny that. Trust in the organized faith and trust in their own ability to know that Jesus was the Christ. Like, that's both. It's so, to reference President Oakes' talk, what he was doing was going about, Korihor was going, it seemed like Alma was going about seeking to weaken the priesthood line that President Oakes might call it. And then Korihor was going about just trying to undercut that anyone could ever know, the personal line. That seems to be what I'm seeing. First off, I haven't read all of President Oakes' talk. I skimmed through it, but I wonder what you think about that. It seems like, just from what we read of them, I think either one would work to discount trust in the other line. If you're attacking one, it sort of tries to like attack the other, or weaken faith in the other line of communication. But I think he was, in his younger years, definitely an antichrist in that sense. But what do you think after both of our comments, Alex?
I think actually those are really fascinating points, and also discerning, trying to understand what areas of revelation, communication do they undercut. When I think of Alma the Younger and the sons of Mosiah, it seemed more like youth who were rebelling against dad. They're very influential, but they did not have a knowledge of the truth like someone who had gone through the temple and been endowed. In fact, I'm pretty sure they had not experienced that. They were youth, they were influential, and they were causing people to fall away, destroying the church. But was it by, so as this definition says, anyone or anything? So there's two qualifications. So anyone that counterfeits the true gospel and openly or secretly opposes Christ. So basically gives people a counterfeit gospel and opposes Christ. I know plenty of individuals that I have met in my lifetime who I would say they're not antichrist, but they're really good at influencing people to leave the church, right? To destroy branches, wards, branches, households. And it's not necessarily and usually they come with a counterfeit gospel, but they're not openly opposed to Christ. Which is interesting, right? Because whereas some people can say, well, happiness comes from all the riches you enjoy, yeah, right, but it's not the core horror or these other individuals who are like, actually there is no Christ salvation. It's for them, there is a salvation that comes through a different means. There is a different way of salvation, right? I wonder if that is significant enough to differentiate. Or someone I spoke to at church, they had said that knowledge leads to knowledge is usually the level of evil by which, or sorry, the amount of knowledge you have amounts to the amount of evil you can exact. And I personally don't think Alma the Younger and the sons of Mosiah had that much knowledge of the church. I mean, it even says in the scripture that there were those who were young at the time of King Benjamin's talk who were too young to understand and to know the words. I'd say, okay, well, therefore their knowledge was, and so that they really grew up kind of being like, well, I don't understand this crap. Church is lame, right? Whereas opposed to Korhor, he's gone through the whole ranks. He's been in church. He's gone through the temple. He's been ordained. I mean, the way he talks and he's specifically calling out ordinances and the way priests behave, sounds like he must have been a priest in the church and had done stuff in the church, right? And it's very similar to the way Zeezrom speaks. Luckily Zeezrom has returns to Christ, but it doesn't. I don't think it necessarily says Zeezrom was Antichrist, but he was definitely playing like the devil in that experience. But Korhor, I think the level of knowledge he had and what he was doing, you are able to destroy the church far more powerfully if you were inside of the church and received a certain level of knowledge, right? You now can take your signs and symbols and tokens and then create anti-signs, tokens, and symbols.
Yeah.
That's a good
Well,
good, Alex. I like that. Yeah.
well, think about it. What you seem to be describing is conscious and unconscious. I mean, someone can be duped by a liar and follow them, and therefore, plenty of people say that any Latter-day Saint is duped by, church leaders or their own, delusions or whatever. But my point is, anyone can be duped by someone and go about doing great harm, whether they consciously are intending to do the harm or not. Now, I would say almost certainly, as someone who certainly was raised in the church, was he one who understood or did not understand? I mean, from what we read later, I think he did greatly understand what his father had said, but he had neglected it. And I think that's what he says when he's, in the thralls of, that deep, like almost to the point of dying pain, right? That exquisite pain. Because I think it says he came to remember the things that his father had said. And
That's
so,
right.
And so he did know, but he worked counter to that knowledge. I mean, everything he did certainly worked to bring people out of the church, and he worked the rest of his life to really struggle to get those people to trust him again. And a lot of them didn't, and he believes that he, as he says, killed them. He killed their faith. I mean, this is pretty severe. So I think what I'm seeing is the conscious unconscious, but effect, or at least the agent who does the Antichrist thing can be consciously doing it to a certain extent and unconsciously, and then also be unaware of the full effects and the impact of their actions. So that's a couple of things there. But I think another line where I would still contend that I think he was performing Antichrist behavior, like literally going about very overtly countering the church in the area. And I guess, so to say my piece about that and ask a question is, what's interesting is here we have an Antichrist example of someone up close being redeemed. If someone accepts that Alma the Younger was performing Antichrist activities, which I argue he was, because we also have it in the example of, what is it, Zeezrom? He has the fever and comes back, right?
Yeah, do the scriptures call him an Antichrist, or is he merely just being the foremost among the individuals to question Alma and Amulek to trip them up? I don't think they call Zeezrom an Antichrist.
Well, he's challenging the roles of Christ as the Son of God. That's pretty, like, as Redeemer and as like a what is it? Like he I think it's in Alma 9 and 11 specifically, where he really goes in and he really does challenge, like, he's not just challenging their ideas, but he's also challenging, like, not just challenging them, but he's really seriously challenging, and he says he's been lied to, right? And he comes out of his fever, right? That's Zeezrom. Sometimes I confuse the two.
No, you are. Yeah, that is Zeezrom. You're right.
Because that's fairly Antichrist. I mean, whether we label them Antichrist or not, or whether the Book of Mormon does or not, there are clear principles in my mind that they are opposing. Like the definition you gave was very much Antichrist. And so I think there's probably a spectrum of conscious, like there's like a level of consciousness, like conscious, willing, seeking to totally destroy it, and then like those who are rebellious and serve the purposes of Antichrist, the spirit of being Antichrist, which would fall into your category of, Alex, of like the rebellious one who wants to just be rebellious against the parental figure, but clearly was also very much, in my understanding, in my vision, like, well, really destroying the church and going about trying to destroy people's faith. And he realizes this later. So he comes to a realization later, which is why I'm allowing this sort of spectrum of how conscious were they and how unconscious were they of the effects of what they were doing and the ramifications. So I'll throw that out there and let you guys decide what you want to do. But I think there's is it possible for an Antichrist, or whatever we want to call it, to be redeemed? I think there's evidence via Zeezrom and via Alma the Younger, in a very detailed way, that yeah, that's totally possible. What do you guys think? Because I think, think about Saul and Paul, right? Saul becomes Paul. Saul's going about, like Alma the Younger, destroying Christians, destroying the church, hunting them down. Like that, you don't have to just argue a philosophical case. Like, he's literally killing the people, the believers. And in that sense, the Lamanites who killed the anti-Nephi Lehis were also performing some kind of an act like that to destroy people in their faith. But how conscious were they of destroying people in their faith? They then realized it after all of a sudden they're just praying and they kill 1,000 of them, 1,005 of these, anti-Nephi Lehis who swore that they would not take up their weapons of war again. But then they are converted. So it's like, again, conscious and unconscious of their ability to challenge Christ.
I think you're right about the conscious and unconscious, and here's why. Actually, taking that same concept, I say Alma's not Antichrist, Alma the Younger, because of his level of understanding. I think it's clear he was not conscious of the fact of the level of evil he was performing, right? And it may be that he was influencing a lot of individuals who were similar to him, young like him, who did not understand the words of King Benjamin, like the scriptures talked about. But the reason why I say I agree with you in that sense and why Alma the Younger is not is because then I juxtapose that to Korihor, who when finally confronted, when humbled, right, with the sign from God, he says, I knew what I was doing was wrong. Right? He admits it. Like he knows it's not unconscious. What he was doing was not unconscious at all. He admits that, yeah, I know that what I was doing is wrong. And it's the same, just like the Antichrist that Jacob encountered. They both make it very clear that they were consciously doing it, regardless of their level of deception by an angel of light or whatever. They both admit, I knew what I was doing. Whereas Alma, did he really know what he was doing? He realized later, right, as when the angel confronted him, he's now realizing, oh my gosh, I'm murdering people's souls, but it was not unconscious, wasn't like that sort of thing. Whereas these antichrists, they had a clear understanding, and so maybe that is the level of which they have covenanted with the Lord, right, and grown in those ways that they cannot subconsciously, or at least these individuals did not unconsciously harm individuals. They knew it was wrong, and it wasn't until God struck them down that they say differently. So I don't know. It's just I think just to spin it on its head.
Well, what's interesting too, though, about Korihor is that after he struck dumb and he asked to be, release the curse, release the sign, right, so that I can talk again. Alma goes like, yeah, but you're not going to stop. Like, he didn't have the change of heart. He didn't have any of that, Korihor, unlike Alma the Younger or Paul or Saul, whatever, Saul, Paul, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure
Yeah.
it probably helped to label him as an antichrist because, and then here's the other thing too is, Mormon is abridging all of this stuff, and so it might be more of Mormon saying this as a hindsight kind of thing, right? Like he's calling Korihor an antichrist because he didn't change, unless it was written like that, before he got the book records and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. That's just speculation on my part. So
Sure. Well, I also would say Saul was not Antichrist because Saul was not presenting a counterfeit gospel at all. He was, in his mind, he was zealously executing and tamping down apostates from the Jewish tradition. Right? For him, it's like it's the law of Moses or bust. And if you know the law of Moses and you're part of the law of Moses, you go against it, you're worthy of being stoned, right? Blasphemy, etc. So he didn't really have an alternative gospel to present anyone. He had only the tradition of the Jews that he was raised with because he was a Jew, right? So I think that there is a difference there because he was zealously going about doing what he knew to be right or what he felt right as per his the law of Moses tradition. Right. He was very zealous for sure. And he definitely was. I mean, you can't really do that as a Jew anyways, but he took it to an nth degree. But it wasn't like, I have a different version of Christianity. It's called the sword and it's called your face.
I have a question for you. Do you think the Sanhedrin were antichrist?
That's a good question.
Saul, though, kind of like, well, these are the laws we're supposed to follow. And
so while you're thinking about that, because what it sounds like is you have to be in the church and then you're antichrist. It sounds like that's apostate, but anyone else could also be antichrist if they're arguing, no matter whether they're in the church or out of the church. They could, anything that is counterfeit to the knowledge of Jesus Christ as the Son of God. They literally called him, Sanhedrin I'm speaking to about, literally called him, it was blasphemy for him to claim that he fulfilled those various multiple scriptures, right? That he was the Son of God. How could he claim Yahweh to be the Father, to be his Father, right? Like that's totally blasphemous. And they were literally like the ultimate definition of Antichrist in that sense, like because they were literally opposing him, who is the Christ. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what is then the definition? Is it someone who was in the church and didn't know, or someone who was in the church? Is it because to me it's saying, I think anything, based on those descriptions, based on the definition from that we were using at the beginning of the convo, I think that it can be anyone who is in the church or out of the church who would seek to oppose anything like the truth of Christ. So a lot of people like to say, philosophers, secularism. Some people might point to anti-Christian writings, for instance, or the Christian critical writings of Nietzsche, right? Like, so I'm trying to say, like, who and how much. Like, I think you have to be like gradations of it and all kinds. There's like, it's very mixed.
Sure.
Now, in the Book of Mormon, though, like, we get individuals who are kind of labeled Antichrist. So you're right. Like, we get, who is it?
You get Sherem, you get Nehor, and you get Korhor. So those are the three listed in the Book of Mormon specifically.
Who are specifically labeled that. And yet we also get Zeezrom, who himself was definitely opposing Christ, like Christ as the role of him as savior and redeemer. And so, like, I would throw another one in there. But you talked about discernment earlier. So I'm wondering, like, because we're hitting on a complicated point of, like, how much did they discern? How much were they aware and conscious, right? Because I know I mentioned Sanhedrin, and now I'm jumping back to Alma the Younger, because Alma the Younger, did say, like he's telling his sons in Alma 36, like, I went about with the sons of Mosiah seeking to destroy the church of God. Like, I don't know how much more Antichrist you can get, other than, like, that. It seems pretty, I don't know, it seems to fit the bill for me. So, but I'm just one person in a group of three here. So
yeah, and it makes you wonder. Yeah, like, I agree with you that it could be inside and outside the church. I think there, it can be anywhere. But perhaps a couple thoughts come to mind. Perhaps in the Book of Mormon, that we are given these examples of these antichrists being members of the church, because in order for an antichrist to be as effective as maybe noteworthy, they usually have to be on the inside, right? It's like it's so easy for someone to be like, Mormons are dumb and they believe blah, yeah, 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 and it's just like, yeah, whatever. As opposed to someone else being like, I love our church, but the prophet's fallen.
yeah, there's a specific
Right, and then it catches people's attention. It's like, he's one of me, he understands me, he can speak my language, right? He and then you give ear into these individuals. So it's not, so I'm saying, I think the Book of Mormon probably listed members, especially members who had gone pretty deep in the doctrine and in the temple, because they were probably much more effective, much more dangerous to the souls
okay. So you're
of
talking about
individuals.
capacity, the increased capacity
Yeah, and that's why.
to dissuade members, because they're like, hey, I identified with you, but now you identify differently. And why do you identify differently? Like, opposed to the gospel, opposed to Christ. So the specifically effective deceptiveness of someone who was inside but is no longer. So, like, because Zeezrom, I think he was on the outside and was converted to the gospel after.
Well, so Zeezrom was part of the city, I think it was Ammonihah. The entire city, if you look at it carefully, the entire city, it indicates that all of them knew the gospel. So it's like a whole city that's gone bad, right? So not necessarily that they're going out and preaching new gospels to, counterfeit gospels and opposing Christ to other cities. They themselves have created a new form of gospel unto themselves, right? And it's so bad that God's telling them he's going to destroy them. He sends Alma there to convert them. So Zeezrom's he's the foremost among those individuals, right? But that, I guess that's kind of the setup there. So he had the gospel, obviously knew it. In fact, they're talking about temple stuff. That's why he was randomly asking, about Adam and Eve and all this other stuff in there. And then you get, but he does, his conscience gets pricked and he does change. Whereas it seems like these antichrists were the most dangerous. So what I was trying to say earlier about the Book of Mormon calling out these individuals who have gone deeper into the gospel, not because they are the only versions of an antichrist that exist, but because they're the most effective ones. This whole city of Ammonihah, where Zeezrom came from, the entire city is corrupted. Whereas opposed to Korhor and even Nehor, Nehor is going about teaching people stuff, and people are like, get the heck out of here. Some of them tie him up, right, and move him along, right? Because it's like those traveling preachers. They're like, hey, let's put a little poison here, let's put a poison there, right? Let's start hurting everyone all around. And that's what maybe that's what made them so dangerous, is because they had a level of knowledge they could relate, right? It's kind of like identity politics, right? Where you can be like, I know you, I know where you're coming from, and the Book of Mormon was true, and then I learned about some peepstone stuff, or about polygamy, and I realized it's not real, or or that Brigham Young made this stuff up, whatever it is they say. And they can reach congregation to congregation. That's the dangerous thing about social media tools too. And so I'm not trying to pontificate too much. It's just ranting there.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting because
Mm.
see Zeezrom, who was a lawyer, and when he's talking to Alma and Amulek, and he says he's described as someone who is a man who was expert in the devices of the devil, that he might destroy that which was good. So he's coming with his lawyerly expertise. How much did he know? He may have had some kind of peripheral, like take a place in. Let's make an analogy. Take a place, to your point, in Utah, Idaho, Arizona, that's high density Mormon population, who would likely be familiar with like basic church concepts. But isn't a member. Like we just don't know if he was a member, because he's converted to the gospel later where he wasn't before. But he seems to know the language. Which would sort of be evidence to your point that he knew. To what degree, I don't know that I can conclude, but
Interesting.
He says various phrases. He's very like easily. If you're to look at his argument, he asks questions like, "Shall he save people in their sins?" Like, it's not necessarily. He's just kind of peppering Alma with all these questions that don't necessarily follow from what Alma said. So I can't say that Zeezrom just followed what Alma said and then questioned him about it. He's inserting language that is different. So than what Alma puts into the conversation. So he knows something about these, the living God. Is there more than one God? Who is it that shall come? Is it the Son of God? Like, Alma says nothing about the Son of God. He says nothing about, so he's putting in phrases is what I mean. There's like a poverty of the input there, to use linguistic terms, that I can't account for. So he must have known, to your point, that something about, like someone in Utah, right, or Arizona, who might peripherally know, or grew up with family members who were, but
or Pastor Jeff. You ever seen Pastor Jeff's YouTube channel?
I've never seen it. I don't know who that is.
He's a Protestant or evangelical pastor who has like gone to General Conference and all these things, and he's very, very good, very likable, but he knows the language, knows how to speak very well, and then he just picks apart our religion to cause people to fall away. And people listen to him because you get members who go, "Oh man, he looks like he might be a searcher for truth. He's going to come unto us," when he's like, now that you're here, it's just through charisma and speaking our language and throwing in the pieces of doubt, he causes people to turn away, right? He's very easily liked. So I think, that's a great example. He'd be a great modern example of that.
Okay. So if we look at those who are affected, if we were to conduct a survey, for instance, of the people who were affected by individuals like you just mentioned, or like the scriptural examples like Zeezrom or Korihor, or how would we characterize their faith? We can only speculate at this point, but how would we characterize their faith, right? Like, in what was their faith placed? And this comes down to a conversation with President Oaks again, and his work and his talk about discernment. In what is our faith based? Is it in let me go back to his talk. There was a good line here.
I have it highlighted here. I know what you're talking about because that one stood out to me.
You might want to say it.
Yeah, it says, if we are solely dependent on one particular priesthood leader or teacher for our personal testimony of the truth, instead of getting that testimony through the personal line, we will be forever vulnerable to disillusionment by the action of that person. And let me just say,
yes, that
is a prime example of individuals who say who base their testimony upon Joseph Smith being a picture of perfection that they have in their mind. So once they hear things that disrupt that perfection, they go, "Oh, this church isn't true anymore," as opposed to using the personal line to have a testimony. Therefore, you can discern that that you should hold on your way, right? Sometimes discernment is a matter of learning from the Lord through the Holy Ghost that what you know is true is true. So don't let this hang you up. Keep moving. But as I said, individuals go, "Oh, I know Joseph Smith, like amazing man." And it's like, "Hey, what?" oh.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about. It reminds me of a conversation we had, not on the show, but separately in our own Zoom, about Richard Bushman's book, 2005 book, Rough Stone Rolling, and that book. I told you I love that book. I thought it was actually what spurred some of my understanding of, like, I got clarity about who Joseph Smith was, and I felt it was so enlightening to me, and it only served to help my faith. But what it did was also, why did it help? Whereas for other people it doesn't. I think it's because, well, there are a lot of reasons, and I don't think I can say them all here, but I would just say I had enough trust that I was communicating with Heavenly Father. My personal line, I had grown to a level of certainty, like in Alma 32. I had a desire. I had grown into a level of certainty, and in the knowledge that I had through the personal connection, so that when I got to what would appear to be the more unsettling aspects of, someone long dead ago, 150 years ago, Joseph Smith, and the circumstances of his life, when I think about the people who were antichrist and how they were called out of sin to a work, I also picture Joseph, anybody else, being called out of whatever circumstances. He described his own youthful circumstances. He lamented them, right? Like often in his first vision account, that's often shared, the most popular version. I'm like, yeah, he's called out of the circumstances to a higher and holier way, as we say now, right? Along a covenant path, and God had work for him to do. God had work for Saul to do. Saul was killing his people. Alma, the younger, was killing his people, was killing the faith of his people and destroying the church of God. But he called those guys out of that behavior into the work. So I go back to a question which I posed earlier: is, can an antichrist be redeemed? I think there's plenty of evidence for that. Not that any of you asked that question. I was the one that asked the question. But I just think it's I just think it's really important that we see, okay, who is being affected by these arguments, and in what is their faith based? Is it in experience with a relationship with Heavenly Father? Is it based on evidence born out of lived experience, or is it based on other people? And honestly, I mean, that's how I treat science too. I don't conduct, and the people I know that trust science don't conduct the experiments themselves. They don't replicate like they're supposed to. When they're supposed to replicate a study, they just trust that the write-up is accurate, 100% accurate and objective. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of unsettling studies that would shake people's faith in science when they realize that there's errant publications, that there are methods and methodologies that are not being followed through, and that data is being incorrectly stated and also intentionally led along in a mendacious, like researchers lie. They also they perform a lot of things. What I'm trying to say is, when there's crisis of faith in religion or science, it boils down to, well, what did you trust in the first place?
Hmm.
In whom did you trust in the first place?
Yeah.
You've got to have personal line, because a personal trust, or a trust in the what's it called, the personal line and the priesthood line,
Yeah.
Yeah.
trust in the people, a trust in other people, it can shake you. It can shake you. And so you've got to be able to maintain that personal relation that can see you through the flaws and the deception and the pain caused by members in the church, which is particularly painful, distinctly painful. And I think that's really important, because you're raising that concern about why that kind of defection is sad and is hurtful, and it can make people members question. But I think the questioning is good. It should be good, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. So I a couple things there. I mean, obviously, I disagree with you vehemently with Bushman.
Yeah.
But in principle, I agree 100% with you, because here's where we need to be as a people. We need to have testimonies of the right things that are solid. That way, no matter what things we learn, whether mendacious or or false and made up, or purposely misquoted or changed, which I think there's a lot of evidence that took place or not, it doesn't make us go, because we can do exactly what you described, Sky, which is we can kind of go, huh, all right, so I'm seeing the process of someone, going from where they were to where the Lord led them to be. Oh well, right. And it doesn't affect you, which is good. That's why our testimonies ought to have, baked into them, is a solidness to not allow additional details, true or not true, to get us hung up, right?
Mhm.
Because whether it's malicious and subtle like Bushman, as I'm claiming, or it's really outlandish and super obviously false, people lose their faith on both sides of that spectrum, right?
Yeah.
When people say really stupid stuff, we're like, wait, that hung, like, you believed that they said that the Book of Mormon was like a rewrite of someone else's book that Joseph Smith found? Like, really? Things that are so obviously stupid and wrong, right? So if we have a testimony of what is true, then we can proceed forward and not get hung up, because we have a trust, right? It creates a level of trust, that everything's going to be okay, that it's all right. And I'd say one of the concerns I have, though, with all that goes on in the world, and especially in the church, is I have found so many Latter-day Saints, and even including in our comment section in our videos, where they basically point out, hey, they say I connected to the personal line. That's basically what they're describing. I connected to the personal line, and I now know, yeah, the Bible's true, God's there, but I don't need the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or any of this nonsense stuff. Like, it's just, it's all made up, etc., etc. But Christ is the Christ, right? Jesus is the Messiah. He's my Lord, my Savior. I now go to the Protestant church. Well, that's concerning, because that means they did not have a testimony of, think of the temple questions. They say, do you know that, in addition to asking if you know your Lord and Savior is, Jesus Christ, do you have a testimony that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God? Right?
Hmm.
Right. We have to have, there's like three things fundamental to our faith. Jesus is the Christ. Joseph Smith was a prophet. The Book of Mormon was translated by the gift and power of God. And now people, and I'd say because of subtleties out there, and perhaps a lack of focus in the right areas, people now obtain a testimony of the one and not the others, and so therefore our religion just looks more like one of many good options out there, but definitely not for them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Just a thought. Brian, you've been very quiet.
Hey man, you guys are using a lot of big words. It's no, I mean, I've just been enjoying listening to you guys talk. You're the smart ones.
Well, I want to jump to you,
Wait,
though, because
hold on really quick. Do you guys know Kevin from The Office?
yeah.
What does he say in, like, I think it's season 8, might be season 9?
Oh, why use many words when few words do trick, or something like that?
Yeah.
I waste time, say lot word when few word do trick.
what you said made me think exactly of that. Sorry, hope that tangent didn't distract Alex from the,
I love it. No, what didn't he say something where Jim was like, it would have been faster for you just to say the whole sentence. What was it? Like he
Yeah,
said something and he was like,
yeah, Michael or maybe it's Andy called him into the office and was like, dude, you can't keep talking like this. And Pam says something like that. She says, yeah, the time it took you to explain it, right? And then he says, so where are you going to go with all this extra time? And he's like, Sea World. And Jim's like, do you mean Sea World or are you going to see the world? You know? But it's great because later he's like, when be president, they see.
They see.
Why use wrong word when few would do trick?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So
love it.
yeah, good luck remembering what you were going to say now, Alex.
Okay. Okay, I think I remember. Oh yeah, Ryan, you said that you had read in the chat. You had mentioned that you had read all these talks with President Nelson during the COVID eras. What stood out to you? What did you learn?
Oh, well, I mean, now we got to go find them all.
Oh yeah, and just to clarify, this transition here is we're talking about discerning, trusting the priesthood line and the personal line, and probably one of the greatest stress tests on that very thing was the COVID era in the church.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that was probably the biggest? That was probably the strongest stress test we've experienced in a long time.
It definitely was for me. What were you saying, Scott?
Oh, definitely the most.
Me too.
The first ever like pervasive global event that what I mean is that like everybody in the church would have to have responded to. We weren't just a regional area of the church in South America or an event in Utah or an event in Africa, wherever the church is, right? Like it was specific. Wasn't specific to one location, one locale. It was literally the globe over, causing a stress point for every member in the church to a different degree than others. But yeah, totally everywhere, for sure.
That's a really good point. Everyone had to, and no one could skirt around it. Every member had to, you know.
They had to respond to the Zoom sessions. They had to respond to not being in person for so long. Yeah, people's patterns of behavior that sort of were the foundation of their church activity, found that disrupted. And while there was space now to do something with that non-activity now, is what kind of activity do you create to replace that? Now there was an opportunity. What do you do? A lot of people chose a lot of different ways, right? Come follow me a little bit, or come follow me a lot at home.
Yeah.
No, come follow me. Reading a lot of different things, or just choosing new ways to believe and be in the world. There was. I mean, it's like an event that'll probably be part of. It's definitely part of church history.
That's true.
As well as personal people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Well, so that just makes me think about just the fact that "Come Follow Me" even existed before this point. That's for me. That's just another drop in the bucket of, modern day prophets are real and they're the, they lead and guide the church under Christ's, revelations and commands. So
Yeah. Because you had, was it 2 years prior to COVID happening? 2 full years prior to COVID was "Come Follow Me," and the emphasis on home learning. We're going to do 2-hour church. You got "Come Follow Me." Everyone's on the same exact schedule. No confusing schedules on what we're studying at home or at church. And the focus is, yeah, we're going 2 hours to church because y'all are trying to leverage church as your only gospel education for your children. So time to make your home-centered gospel learning a real part of your life. Then boom, COVID happens. And it's like, well, legit now. Now I've got to hold sacrament meeting in my house.
yeah,
Yeah.
no way around.
Remember those days? Like
yeah.
I remember blessing the sacrament in my house every Sunday and stuff. Well, I mean, everyone did it differently, but we got dressed up. Kids would sit on the couch, and I was amazed how reverent they would behave. And bless the sacrament, they'd have it. We'd do a little lesson. I was like, those are probably some of the most spiritual church attendance experiences I've ever had. It was right in my living room, and that because it was inspiring. I think you're right, Ryan, that those things are a big example of like if the stress test of COVID upon you based on what the church leaders were saying and what was going on, how they behaved, like President Nelson getting a shot, if that really shook your faith, then look back to 2 years prior when Come Follow Me was preparing us for this day.
So, speaking of President Nelson and the shot itself,
Oh, Wikipedia is gonna appear underneath this video. You know how the Wikipedia entries get linked underneath? Like when anybody mentions either the 2020 election or COVID.
oh really?
Thing. Yeah, they usually appear underneath with an explanation, and it's usually a Wikipedia link if I remember to that topic. Sorry, go ahead.
No way.
But fact checkers
Yeah.
that have
I'm just saying that it seems to be that's what appears if something like that ever gets mentioned.
Yeah.
nice. All them fact checkers that admitted that they were biased towards Biden and Big Pharma. Anyway, but yeah, so when they mentioned or when he said that he had gotten I'm not gonna call it vaccine because it doesn't do anything like a vaccine's supposed to do. When he got the jab, I was pretty torn about it. I mean, it didn't put me into some deep faith crisis of, oh my gosh, the prophet's wrong. The church is, going to hell in a handbasket. And like, none of that came up. It just became more of my own internal struggles of like, well, I don't believe in this shot because number one, it's completely unproven and results are varying quite differently, but mostly in the not working zone. And it was just kind of like by the time I couldn't find it. I was trying to find it, but all that were coming up were the conference talks. That actual video that you were just talking about. So I couldn't remember the exact timeline of it, but it had to have been like 21 sometime, right? 2021 at some point. So probably like later 2021, I think. I don't remember, but anyways, there had definitely been enough at this point of okay, it's like vaccine. Well, sorry, the jab is not working. If anything, it's causing more harm than good. And for some people, maybe it was working. I don't know, but overall, that's been debunked and disproven. Although there was probably gonna be arguments about that one in the comments. Yeah.
Dude, bring it on because you're right.
But like I had gotten COVID before the whole thing even started. Like I had gotten it December of 19. And I mean, nobody knew what it was yet, but it was just this nasty flu that I had for like 2-3 weeks that normally, the normal medications weren't doing anything with, But since then, like I had never had it. So this was already, a year and a half later, and like I haven't gotten sick since. So I don't know what to really think about this and all this kind of stuff. I remember talking to my mom about it, my parents about it, and just kind of I will admit I eventually got the Johnson and Johnson one. I don't remember much about it, but I haven't had any issues with it since. So and part of me is ashamed that I did it. But at the same time, I was kind of like I wasn't blindly following President Nelson, but at the same time I was kind of like, the struggle of I believe that he is the prophet and that he is, kind of what he says goes, but again, not blindly following it, like finding this out for myself. I guess I'd never had anything like that before for myself. I don't know. White people problems, I guess. I don't know. I'm sorry, guys.
You're causing PTSD event in Skylar right now. He's like, go, every day at work. It's like, this was a safe place, Ryan. Look what you've done to him.
Sorry.
Now you did it by saying that word. Gosh.
But I think when it came to that scenario, it was very hard for me because I had a very different. I guess my experience was a bit different, right? I would read the announcements they would present, right, and I was like, to me, it sounds like he's saying, get the shot if you feel if you feel like you need it, basically. If perhaps you follow the recommendation of your doctor or whatever else, and you need immunity, that's like my own immune system can provide me with immunity. I'm going to be okay. I'm not immunocompromised. I'm not super old and with bad health issues, which were basically the only individuals dying from it.
Right.
Children extremely protected from it, which I thought was a wonderful miracle from the Lord. But for me, I was just kind of like, so, but I had that, because especially being in the Utah bubble, man, is like, everyone's like, hey, is that, and even like my bishop being like, he said, get the shot, right? Like, and he's like publicly putting it constantly in the Facebook section of our Facebook group. But I knew in my heart, I was like, I don't feel I should get the shot. But then I felt extremely guilty for feeling that in my heart, because I was like, well, I'm starting to think that maybe the prophet's saying you better freaking get this thing, but it didn't feel right in my heart to do it, so I didn't do it. Which is an interesting conundrum.
Mm.
And then in my experience, I can't remember if I prayed about it or not. I just did not feel in my heart I should do it. But the individuals I have known personally who are faithful, who don't say the prophet's fallen, who prayed about getting the shot, like, well, I'm not sure. They prayed about it. Everyone that I've ever met all got the answer to no, not get the shot.
Mm.
And they were older individuals. In fact, 2 of them are our mothers.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I thought that was interesting, because I was like, oh. And I thought if anyone would probably get a yes, it'd be y'all senior citizens.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm so glad you mentioned your experience, Ryan, and yours too, Alex, because I initially was like, I'm following evidence wherever it leads. And so that led me to, so in March, like 2020, I started reading Jay Bhattacharya, his work, in investigating the clinical studies, the initial trial runs of these, or of what COVID was, and then eventually later that year and into the next year, the vaccine efficacies. And he had published something called the Great Barrington Declaration. I don't know if you guys heard of it.
I've heard of that, but I don't remember what that is.
So it was a document that he and other professionals wrote up and signed and said, look, we have to realize this is going to impact different age ranges,
Yeah.
body, immune responses differently. So we have to at least consider catering shutdown and other things that were common at the time, to different portions of the population. And so it was the phrase that he used. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting it now. But in the Great Barrington Declaration, he was very much advocating for not stratified. He was discussing
Strategic or
no, focused protection might be the word, but it was, it might have been focused protection, but it wasn't that. That was the word that I'll use now, but this is a group of infectious disease epidemiologists, and it got disparaged. Like, I think even the Fauci team that wrote the initial major paper on COVID, they really disparaged this and wanted it in social media to be downplayed. The Great Barrington Declaration, I signed it, and I read it and signed it. There were nurses, there were doctors, there were epidemiologists who were all part of this, seeking to be like, let's really find a not only minimize mortality, but also social harm. We got to balance these. And there were those arguments out here in the media and politicians got a hold of it, and so it just took off and was like, there's not even going to be a conversation about this. That sucks. But people were trying to have it, and they couldn't have it, but some were having it, and I was part of that. So they called it focus protection. So trying to, I already described what that is, and I ended up getting the Johnson and Johnson because I needed to attend university in the middle of my PhD, and in order to do that in 21, I needed to have it. I could have signed the waiver, but I was out in California working that summer. In order to get back, I was like, just get a shot. And it was I had to make sure there was stuff with my heart because I have arrhythmia in my heart. We're having a regular heartbeat every other beat. So I was like, that's going to jack up my cardiovascular system if I don't get the right one, or at least I wanted to find one that would reduce the chances. And then
Sure.
When they requested in 21 that all students get a booster, that's when I was like, no, I'm fine. I am fine, and I know the spreading of it is like there's so many independent variables that are beyond the spreading of it that I was like, look, I'm gonna waive it according to my conscience, and that's how it's gonna be. And so I ended up there's an experience with that I won't share now, but it was but when I looked at the prophet and I saw him doing it, I was like, why is he doing that? Like, that's fine. He can do that. Like, I don't know. I felt no compunction to follow him because I was already focusing on like the Great Barrington Declaration. I was already focusing on evidence, and I was weighing evidence wherever I could find it, seeing how reliable the evidence was. So when he did it, I was like, well, I mean, he is like pushing 100, like, or 90 at the time. I was like, he has to get it. But I didn't think he commanded people to, but I also think he strongly urged people to. And he was also a medical practitioner, like he was a heart surgeon. So if anybody was to be taken as seriously as possible outside of his prophetic ability, it would have been him, as opposed to any other apostle. Like it was like the combination of both was really easy for people to say, and be conflicted. So I have utter sympathy for everyone, because that's tough. That's tough. And so for me, I was willing. I don't know. Like I talked to like my wife and other people who were like, man, when President Nelson did that and got the shot and showed it, and others did too. I was like, they were really, conflicted about it. Some were mildly conflicted, others greatly conflicted. And so I was like, I understand. And I know that's not easy, but for me, I was like, this isn't read over the pulpit. This isn't, I don't know. I didn't think it was an official declaration. I know that it was publicized heavily. So I get the influence. I get that. But I was just not, I don't know. I wasn't persuaded by that. I just thought, oh, I guess, yeah, I mean, he got the shot. I was like, that makes sense. Focus
Sure.
protection via the Great Barrington Declaration. I was like, that makes sense. Go do it. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, Latter-day Saints, unfortunately, too often, well, they look at what the prophet does, and they'll just be like, looks like it's for everyone to do the exact same thing, right? But he made it pretty clear in all the things he was actually saying that it wasn't like, hey guys, watch what I'm gonna do exactly the same thing, right? And also one of the things that I have a lot of sympathy for when it comes to the leaders of the church, that we should keep in perspective is they are leading a global organization, and they have many hundred, well over 100 different governments now that breathes down their neck. And COVID was a tyranny poker game that all the governments were playing. You can't get this some teeny church with 17 million members, half of which aren't even active, to be like, we're making a stand. It's like, and now our temples are gone. And our church buildings.
I didn't even think that he would say that they would really say much at all. Like that they are in a position to say something about that. I suppose people could argue that they are in a position, given it was global and the church is global and everything. That makes sense too. I don't know. I just, for some reason, it didn't cross my mind that I was like, if he's going to do it, it's going to, like, I didn't feel conflicted, and I'm still trying to figure out why exactly. But I also have a skeptical view of unions, college administrations, organizations, and leadership. I'm very hesitant to accept leadership calls and positions, and because I don't want people to trust me. I want people to do what they need to do for themselves. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Like for me, whether it's any kind of leadership position, like I'm currently in now, and I'm just like I'm still conflicted because I'm like I want to do what I can to build faith. I don't want you to trust me beyond my ability to help you build faith. Like don't trust me in my opinions. Don't trust me in like I hope what I do in my personal life also reflects faith, and that's what I strive for. But also, like I'm just skeptical of institutional leadership, and I think I'm healthily skeptical because it causes me to do some homework on my part because I want to consciously follow and believe what I can, which means I whittle down to like a few different beliefs rather than like a ton of them that are kind of like surface level beliefs about church or college or science or whatever. It's like, no, get me down to like, I know certainty, and then the rest are all question marks I'm willing to pursue. I guess that's how I see it. So I don't know about you guys, but
Well, so to relate this back to then discernment, right?
Mhm.
How as members, looking back, what was your process of discerning, the whole situation that, that you could hold true and not say, oh gosh, looks like prophet's a fallen prophet, right? I'm going to go to that extreme real fast because that's the extreme I've still encountered today. I still find individuals who are like, can't go to church anymore. He's a fallen prophet because of the experience. Or the other extreme of being like, everything they do is gospel doctrine. He got the shot. Every member should definitely be getting the shot. Stick him up your nose. Do it now, right?
Yeah.
Those different sides of the spectrum.
I
So
guess I
what
saw
role did discernment play?
I guess I saw it like politics where I'm like, what role is he to play? He probably shouldn't come down on either of these. And that's essentially what his message was, I thought, where he didn't say get it, but he said use your discernment, essentially. He's not in those
Yeah.
words, but what we're talking about now is like pray and figure out for yourself. And like with politics, it's like I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Use your conscience and pray, right? Involve your faith as much as you feel it's appropriate and pray about it and come to your own
What?
conclusions. And so I was like, I just kind of approached any public declaration. I approached kind of similarly. I'm like, and I see prophets, they're fallible beings. And I treat them like that. And I say, they're fallible, just like I'm fallible. They're probably great compared to me in a lot of ways. But I think of some things that Joseph said, where he said, any member, the least of the members, can know everything the apostles know if he will but pray and adhere to the Spirit of God. So it's like you can know what they say is true, and you can live as righteously as anybody could. He's just been called to this calling. This prophet, this man, this fallible individual has been called to this calling. But when he speaks by the Spirit, you will know it if you've also got that spirit of discernment with you. Like that's the big key. That's the big key is being obedient and commanding, like in those commandments, and then using your agency to fill your life creatively with the Spirit, right? And then you'll have that discernment in a greater way than you would have otherwise. Is the promise, right?
Can I throw out a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So what happens, what do we do when the church leader, apostle, or prophet legitimately did give us the wrong counsel?
Well, I mean, gave us the wrong counsel,
Right? Like, and so,
I'm okay with it, personally.
well, so the reason why I throw that out there is because I've asked that question many times in my life, and so far as I have studied church history, it seems as though the answer from the Lord, from the experiences of previous saints, is that the Lord wants you to obey them anyways because He will prepare a way for you and He will bless you for doing so. I think a couple of really good examples of that are you have Brigham Young telling the saints, don't come out west by handcart if it's after like August 12th or July something, right? Because there's harsh winters out here, it's a long trek. Don't come after. Well, you have Elder Richards. It's not Willard Richards. It's a different Franklin Richards, I believe. He's an apostle, and he is helping those saints prepare to go across the plains. Basically, helps them on their way despite it being the wrong lateness of the season. And we're all kind of aware of Savage, Michael Savage kind of being like, we shouldn't do this, but you know what? I will go with you. I'll even die with you. This is your decision. And then later along the way, Franklin Richards passes them as they're hurrying to Salt Lake in their buggies, and he basically he calls out Savage for ever saying anything negative about them going at the lateness of the season. That's a destruction of faith, and basically tells the Saints, keep going, right? Don't even stop at this one fort, at Fort Laramie or wherever it was. Just keep going. That was the wrong counsel. The prophet said something otherwise. And to even emphasize that point, when Franklin Richards gets to the Salt Lake Valley and reports to Brigham Young what happened and what he said to the Saints, Brigham Young basically is just like, I'm going to deal with you later. Basically like, you said the wrong crap, bro. And then the next day on conference, he's like, we got to go save our Saints. They're out, they're going to get trapped in this horrible storm. We got to go out and save them. But none of those Saints who went through that experience ever murmured about it, never regretted it. And a couple other really cool facts. One is there was not, in terms of like the percent of people who die crossing the plains, like the Oregon Trail, all individuals, not just Saints, they actually had about the same death rate percentage-wise, regardless of the season, as other handcart companies and other wagon trail companies that cross the plains. Even though it's really sad to see all that death happen, they actually didn't have like a higher death toll, which is interesting because the way you read it, it almost sounds like, gosh, all dropping like flies is the worst thing ever. Turns out it was kind of average. But the other side is they received eternal blessings that they blessed the entirety of their lives and even into celestial glory in some cases, right? Because they followed, they were trying to do their best. They were not willfully disobedient to Brigham Young's counsel. They were even following the counsel of an apostle who was making some mistakes. And the Lord blessed them entirely. I think when it comes down to it, if the Lord's anointed give you the wrong counsel and you follow it, right? It's not go murder those people, right? That's a totally different scenario. That's a different extreme I don't even want to discuss. But if they give you counsel, we should obey, because the Lord is going to basically, I don't know if the word consecrate is the right word to say, but it's going to make something wonderful for you out of your obedience, because the Lord is still going to sustain those individuals despite their faults. And you have to think about it. If the Lord doesn't sustain his own anointed, who the crap is going to sustain them? If the Lord don't do it, why the heck would we ever sustain those fallible individuals?
Yeah. You raise good points. And I think of, adhering to the family proclamation, for instance. It's a controversial thing to do. I think
sadly it's controversial.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward stuff. So I don't know why that's such a controversial.
Right, but it is. And then also, like, we can see, for example, like racial segregation within the church, at that for decades, right? Like that's another topic of like, well, yeah, that was not a good decision or not a good experience. That was a racially divided church, and we can look back on it and think how great things are now and how bad people were then. Like, to whom do you attribute the fallibility and the decision there? And I can say I think that's a mistake that was made, but we're going to live with people who choose to make mistakes as leaders. We're not called to think of them as perfect either. Like, we're just not. Do we sustain them? It's up to us how we sustain them. And I know the Lord says, for instance, like it's better to obey than to sacrifice, right? Like I think he says that to Saul, if I recall. Like, or is it Solomon? Sorry, he's like, better to obey the Lord than to try and make up your own sacrifice. Like obey what the Lord commands, and you'll be blessed. So I get what Alex is saying there, and I think we're always going to have to balance with an imperfect individual who, like, when does he speak by the Spirit, and when do you then also respect him or respect that person, that leader? I mean, it doesn't just have to be the prophet. It can be the priest quorum advisor. It can be the young women's leader. It can be the Relief Society president. Someone who has priesthood authority to act in that leadership capacity How do you sustain that fallible individual who doesn't have a high office, but nonetheless issues counsel and direction? That it just has to be so prayerfully and spiritually done, I think, no matter what. And you can come to different conclusions, but not be faithless, I think. I That's a tentative, I think, because that's been my lived experience. But I'd love to hear what you think about that, Ryan. And then also, I don't know if when Alex will get back, but
That's been your truth.
oh boy. Strike three, man. That's strike three.
Am I gone? Do I have to leave now?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I leave. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know, man. Just, I like what you just said there at the end there. We have to hope for in the best of trusting the fallible people, but we should be able to do it without being faithless. Kind of like in the talk there, right? It talks about Elder Oaks' talk. Like, well, what are we truly putting our faith in? Are we putting it in the principles and the gospel, or principles of the gospel, or is it the people? Well, it's the people. You're going to get. It's not going to be a good outcome.
You're going to be disillusioned, just
Yeah.
like with politics. You're like, wow, these people are scuzz buckets. And you're like, well, they're also fallible humans in powerful positions. So, and I get people hoping and wanting for something better in church structure and organization, because, well, it's you preach the best, you preach the gospel, you preach gospel living, and you don't want people to uh, to live and conduct themselves in a bad faith way, to break your trust in
Right.
them, right? And then therefore by association with the church and the organization itself. When if you get a different leader in there, suddenly you get a great leader who's actually living honestly and complete, obeying commands, and but also living personally with their agency, doing a lot of good, and you see
Right.
it. And then it's like, wow, it can flip like that, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so so I don't know. I think I've talked myself into exhaustion here. I'm pretty tired, guys. I think I'll have to go here soon. But I don't want to go before we either you guys continue or I sign off. And
Well, so what did or I guess I kind of missed the last part here, but
yeah, you missed.
I mean,
three.
my hope is coming off from this is people can discern between truth and error, so they're not deceived by antichrist. They're not deceived by those who can turn us away from our faith, and also we can discern between what our actions ought to be, right? Because the Holy Ghost will show us all things that you should do. And sometimes the actions the Lord wants us to take is to hold on your way, to don't do anything irrational, don't do anything drastic, right? Don't leave the church, right? If it's a COVID question, if it's any other question, it's just hold on your way. It'll be okay, right? This little bundle of a wiry mess that you can't stand, like put it on the shelf, figure it out later. What you know is true. And happiness, I've never seen a single individual become truly filled with more joy after leaving the church when they once had a testimony compared to those who stay, regardless of the trial of their faith.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I've seen people find temporary levels of elation and excitement and I say happiness, because joy is not happiness. When they liberate themselves from the bonds of as almost as a core horror describes it, from the shackles of this religion. But ultimately, give it a couple years, and you look back at them like, yeah, your hair is purple now. You're married to someone of your same gender. I'm just throwing out examples of people I know. But it's like, you don't want kids. You now have a dog that is your kid, and you just, you are no longer as pleasant as I remember you to be. And we don't even talk about faith together. You just don't seem that happy anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you were just saying, the one that I always hear is I'm freer now. I'm the burden is gone. It's like, well, it never really was a burden to begin with. And like you were just saying with Korihor, right? That's how he says it to people. It's like, the church is oppressive, man. Like, you guys need to be free. You guys got to cut loose from this stuff and go and enjoy yourselves and blah 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 blah. And it's the same arguments that we see today. And
Exactly.
there's a heck of a lot more people that talk about this stuff, especially with the creation of social media.
True. Well, so Skylar, any last encouragements to those who listen?
I think just, follow Christ as best as possible. Like, think of his principles, and your day, or my day, my life will get better. Like, that's basically it. Because then I know that I'm living a way that I can see consciously helps people. And so when I engage in conversation, I always remember that personal experience. I mean, that's what I would say. I mean, when questioning, I think questions are literally fundamental to the LDS faith. There's a lot more for why I think that. That's how I've approached my faith, questioning whether it's people behavior, church structure, doctrines, scripture, the creation of the scripture, the transmission of ideas via the spirit, a lot of different things, like, and the spiritual experiences that I've had. Like, I've recorded those things, written them down, questioned them, tried to figure out what they mean and what they did and how I'm to respond to them. And I've written, well, you don't know, but I've written over 2,000 pages of journal entries over like 15 years, from like 2000 to 2015 or so. And most of it's spiritual based. So I have like evidences, questions, and I keep questions and a list of tons of questions. And I may never get to all of them, but I strive to answer. So I just think that if you just live the gospel, like really live the gospel, you won't get hung up on how specifically you, I don't know, in a Pharisee or is it Sadducean way, where it's like, I need to be so specific. It's like, Christ loves me no matter what. Whether I wear my garment when I'm mowing the lawn, because I'm just like, man, I got to do this and get this done, and I'm wearing my workout outfit. Like, I don't think Christ loves me less because I didn't follow the prompting, or I followed.
He'll be the judge of that,
right? Or like I didn't reach. Like, His grace covers everything. It's how I respond, and I want to respond. That's personally for me what fulfills the covenants and commandments that I've promised to live by, and I try to do my best, and I give everyone the grace that I try to receive from Christ. So just follow Christ. And so for everyone who also, I have no great message to anyone who's going through a faith, what they might term a faith crisis, or is, like, I think you'll come out a better person if you sincerely engage while you have that crisis. What is it that you believe? What is it that you don't believe? Sincerely write that down and study for yourself. Like, that's it. I can't tell you what to think. I can't tell that person. I could talk about the challenges that I've faced and how I've met them and engaged with them. And I think that will be there will be an honest result from that. And I even think people who, like, I like watching shows that try to expose the church, because I look for the rhetoric. I'm a rhetoric and writing professor and teacher. I'm finishing my PhD, so I'm like trying to work through all of these ideas about rhetoric, and so I like to listen for the rhetoric in them, and I see what I think are things that are not necessarily particular to the church itself. Even though the content of their message might seem to criticize the church, there are moves in there, rhetorical moves, that I honestly find so much grace for, where it's like, I think that with even more questioning, they could be like the people I see who actually return to church on other channels, the other YouTube channels or podcasts where people have criticized the church and then they come back. As long as they're being honest, they'll move to what can honestly change their life for the better. That's what the gospel does. So try to just find how it's going to make your life better. That's it.
That's a wonderful message. Amen. Amen. And a woman.
Woman.
Oh my God.
Thank you guys so much for this discussion. This is great. Actually, I really enjoyed this. Very fruitful.
Yeah, same
Let's
here.
connect again soon. We'll message about what our next subject should be, and if it lines up again with "Come follow me," that's a plus. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, click on the link in the description, and there you can donate to help us produce more content like this. Once again, we can't do any of this without your support. We thank you so much for the time that you have spent on this, and every comment, every share, every like, and every subscription really makes a big difference. And thank you once again, and hopefully we'll see you at the next video.